Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello, welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. Oh, I love you guys. This just is, sometimes the things we talk about are hard, and sometimes the things we talk about are funny, and sometimes it's just life-changing stuff. So the concept I'm going to talk to you about today is something that Spirit's been talking to me about lately a lot, and not just for me, but for just the collective, and just for this month, and just for the way things are going. It's Spirit just keeps telling me, you know, this is the message I need to put out for right now. And I don't know how that is affecting everybody, because it's a hard message. It's one of the hardest things it can trigger, it can trigger anxiety, because so many people like to have control. They like to control all of the things. And even in our spiritual growth, we like to have control. We want it to be easy. We want it to be all rainbows and roses, and spiritual growth is not easy. And one of the biggest concepts of spiritual growth, and in almost anything in life and in manifesting, and, you know, even me when I first started readings, is I wanted so badly to control how the reading went. I wanted to control the information that came through. I wanted to control it. And as soon as I learned to surrender it to Spirit and make it not about me, and make it about the sitter, and make it about the spirits that want to come through, then it just flowed. It just was easy. And I think sometimes that's just how life is in general too. We want to control it. We want to control the outcome. We want to control other things. And that's kind of what we've been taught, right? We've been taught, make a goal, set a goal, set what you want, visualize what you want, even with manifestation. Visualize what you want, visualize the things, and then put it out in the universe, and then work for it. And so this concept of surrendering is super hard, because we think when we surrender, we just let it go. We just let it go, and we let the universe take care of it. And that is true up to a point. We don't surrender our free choice. We don't surrender our beliefs. We don't surrender our integrity. We just know that there's a time and the place, and we've done all the work we can, and it's time to let the rest go. It's time to let the universe take the rest. We can't, I always give this key scenario, but I'm going to go more in depth today. It's about losing your keys. So, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself too, because when we think of surrendering, some people get anxiety. Some people get it's a trigger for them, because they have to have some sort of control, which is completely fine, because it's fine in that it's normal. It's normal that you get nervous, or it is something that can cause some anxiety, and that's what we're trying to learn to, is to let it go. And I'm going to try and give you tips on how to do that. And just know, if you can't let it go, or you struggle letting go, especially intrusive thoughts, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff with mental health too that is a fine line here, that it's kind of hard for me to cross that line, because I've had intrusive thoughts that you cannot let go of. I've had things happen to me that I have dwelled on for 2 or 3 days. And I had, a reading a couple weeks ago that I dwelled on it for a week before I finally just had to let it go. It was done. It was over. There's nothing I could do to change it. I had to give it to God, or I had to give it to the universe. And so I get it. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. So this is just to kind of help you guys, because during readings all the time, the two biggest questions I get is, what is my purpose? I feel like I'm stuck, which is kind of contingent to this, right? Because And the second one is how do I just let it go? How do I move forward? And especially with death, you can't just let it go. That's not what I'm talking about here. But you can't change it, right? It happened. And so you have to somehow let it be, or and figure out how to live your life with it in place. I was the song by Paul McCartney, Let It Be, the way he wrote it, the reason why he wrote it is because he had a dream in the 60s where his mom, who died of cancer when he was younger, she came through. He was worried about some stuff. I think Let It Be was one of the last songs the Beatles wrote together. I think there was some stuff going on in the group. I'm not completely positive, but that's what I think I read somewhere. And she came, and his mother's name was Mary. So a lot of people think that when he says Mother Mary comforts me, that it's the Mother Mary, but it was his own mother. And she came to him in a dream. She says, it's going to be okay. Just let it be. And sometimes I even like to add, just let it be easy. Let it be easy, because sometimes we push and hustle. Some people love the hustle. Some people do. And we watch the hustle on social media, and we watch people say, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And I get that works for some people, and sometimes I like the hustle too, but sometimes I also like to just let it be, because sometimes when I'm working the hustle and I get so caught up in the hustle that it turns negative for me. And when I think about the work, or I think about the readings, or I think about, this was in the past, I'm not like this anymore, I would get so tight and anxiety and stressed that I just had to let it go. I had to let it be. I had to just know if the reading wasn't perfect, and if somebody wanted to say something about it, or if somebody wanted to say something about me being a medium, I just had to let it go. I had to let it go and not care about it, because you know what? I was stopping myself. I was stopping myself. And we can do this in every aspect of our life, especially when you're trying to build a business and all of the status quo and all the collective is like hustle, hustle, hustle. And there is nothing wrong with the hustle if that's what you love, and that's what brings you power, and that's what brings you the enjoyment. But if you get to the point where you can't stand the hustle, and you hate the hustle, and you don't look forward to the hustle, and it's not fun anymore, then you got to step back and you got to reevaluate how it's going to happen. And that's happened to me many times when I've hustled, and I finally, if this isn't fun for me anymore, and I step back, and just it so happens that it worked out anyways, even without the hustle. But because I did try the hustle and I showed that initiative, it still came through. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about, this key analogy with the lost keys, right? You get this brand new car and you want to take it for a drive, and you lose the keys and you can't find them. And in a world of everything beautiful, you would be like, okay, Spirit, help me find my keys. And you would sit down on the couch and the keys would plop in your lap. But that is not how life happens. So let's say your purpose in life is to drive that car and find the keys to drive it. The purpose in life is to drive that car, but you can't drive the car until you find the keys, which is the journey. Okay, so your purpose is to drive the car. The keys, finding the keys, is the journey, and you don't want to do the journey. You just want to drive the car. You don't want to enjoy the journey. You just want to drive the freaking car. So you ask Spirit, help me find the keys so I can drive my car. And if you just sit on the couch, Spirit is not going to just drop the keys in your lap. Now, sometimes, in some rare occasions, you will stick your hand underneath the cushion and the keys will be there. That happens very rarely, but it can happen. It just depends on where you're at and how much you need to enjoy the journey. Most of the time, you say, Spirit, help me find the keys, and you've got to actively look, and you've got to actively decide, I'm gonna find these keys. I'm gonna help find these keys. And you look everywhere. You ask the kids, have you seen the keys? You look in the bathroom, you look in the drawer, you look everywhere you think you've been. You look in the fridge, you look everywhere, and you can't find the keys. And suddenly, it's getting to the point that every time you look at the car, you just get so frustrated and angry. And the car isn't supposed to do that. The car is supposed to bring you joy. So you keep actively looking, and finally it gets to be to where you start to get angry and you start to get mad. And you're just like, I don't even want to drive the car now. I don't even want to do it. This is too much work. This is too hard. So you sit down and you take a break and you stop looking for the keys for a minute. You start to enjoy the kids. You start to enjoy do whatever you're doing around the house. You start to enjoy hanging out in the backyard. You start to enjoy whatever it is, but you're not so focused on the keys. You're just, all you think is, you know what? I'll eventually find them, or I'll have to order new ones, but I'll eventually get to drive the car. And you visualize, I'll get to drive the car. I know I'm going to. I just don't know how. And then all of a sudden, the dog comes from the backyard into the house and he drops the keys in front of you on the floor. Here's the thing. The dog could have brought it through later while you were sitting on the couch, but the universe knew you were actively looking for the keys. Actively looking. Or another scenario is you go in and you look on the end table where you looked a million times and they just happen to be there. This time that you looked. So, when the magic happened is when you let it go. When it's really hard because some people are like, don't get attached to the outcome. And it's hard because you're also taught, you visualize the outcome, you visualize you doing it, but don't get attached to how it's going to happen. Because what usually happens is you look at a goal and then you kind of look at it backwards saying, okay, how am I going to complete that goal? I got to do this, 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 and this, and this. So you're controlling how it's going to happen, which is completely fine. You can still do that work. But sometimes that work, that procedure or those steps that you created, sometimes they get a fast or they get a slow. Now, who knows why you didn't find the keys until the dog brought them in? It could be that if you would have taken the car at that precise moment, you would have gotten a car accident. Or if you don't ever know. All you know is you have to remember that you're at the right time and the right place for a reason. You're in this moment for a reason. So it's just, the reason why this is so hard is because you hear both sides, right? Like you can't just say this is going to happen and then and that's part of the secret. You can, the secret says you can just say, oh, this is going to happen, and you sit down and you wait for it to happen. I guarantee you somewhere in there, there's steps that you've taken, visualization, goal setting that you've taken to reach that point. It's not just going to happen. Very rarely does it. But there are some times that you set up the how, and the how just doesn't work. And then that's when you've got to let it go and surrender. There's just some times that life hits you and things happen that you can't sit and dwell on it, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Even with death, you do get permission to grieve. Everybody grieves in a certain way. But I also want you to ask yourself, would your loved one want you to continue living in hell, in the hell that you create? So you've got to decide how you're going to react. You've got to decide. And sometimes when things are out of your control and you've done everything you can to control it and there's nothing you can do, you need to step back and you need to let it go and you need to surrender and you need to let Spirit help you, because they're there. And they will guide you, and they will help you, and they're going to help you along the way. Once you make the decision, they can't help you if you're fence sitting, right? Like if you're fence sitting and you don't make a decision, and you're just kind of fence sitting and saying, I can't decide what to do. They can't help you with that, because they don't know what you want to do. But once you decide and you say, okay, I'm going to do this instead, I'm going to do this, they 100% will go and help you. Because here's the thing. Your purpose will never change. You have multiple purposes. If you've heard me talk about Walmart and you send down your prescriptions to Walmart and you get your purposes, your subscriptions or your purposes, there's different ways to your purpose. And your spirit guides are trying to help you find the path of least resistance. But sometimes on your path you may fall, but on that fall you might find a beautiful, beautiful crystal that helps you on your path even more. And even though you feel like the fall wasn't worth it, or you feel like, well, why would they lead me on this fall? You've got to remember the fall was there because it helped you in some way. So there's different paths to your destination. The goal is your guides are trying to help you find the path that is for your highest good. Because at the end of the day, it's all for your highest good, and it's all for everybody's highest good. We just don't see that. We see the hurt and the anguish and the pain and the hustle, and we get tired, and that's okay. If you're tired, take a freaking break. We're not taught that. We're taught stay till late, all this stuff, and you know what? Take a freaking break. Just take a break. And surrender and let your guides do some of the work for you. It's totally fine. And so I'm going to give you some steps to help with the surrendering, because it can be hard. Okay. So number one is let it go. You've got to, you know what? Give yourself a time limit. If you're having intrusive thoughts or if you're dwelling on something that happened, and you can't let it go, you can't, then give yourself a time limit. Say, okay, I get 2 days to cry about this, or I get 3 days to do whatever I want, or to dwell on it, or to think the process through, or to think whatever I want to. And I got to promise myself that I got to let it go. I've got to try and let it go. And so what I do too, when I was going through this certain thing a couple of weeks ago, every time I would think about it, I would tap the top of my chest, and I would shut my eyes, I would take a deep breath, and I would say, let it go, let it go. There is nothing I can do about it now. It is out of my hands. Spirit will take care of it. Spirit will protect it. Spirit will guide it. Spirit will take care of it. I've done all I can. I did the best I could. Now I got to freaking let it go. And so tapping is, you can cross your hands over your body like an X over your chest, and you can tap your left, right, left, right, left, right. Or sometimes you can just go to the center of your chest and just tap. This helps me to chill or to calm. And so I just close my eyes, take a deep breath, and just say, let it go. Let it go. Spirit's got this. And I have to keep reminding myself of that. And so that's pretty hard. But it helps to just know that it's guided, or Spirit's got it, and it'll end up in your highest good, even if it's not the best scenario that you could ever enact. You can't control it anymore. How it ends up, it's out of your hands. You can't control it. And so let it go. And those are the steps, the strongest steps I could tell you to let it go. Meditation works, but sometimes, honestly, if they're intrusive thoughts, they're just going to come to you in meditation, unless you do a guided meditation. Keeping busy. Sometimes if you just sit and do nothing and dwell on it, that's harder. If you actually go out and do something like that doesn't put you in a meditative state where you can't think, like go swimming or take the kids out where you have to be preoccupied, that helps too. Things like that. The next one is ignore the noise, or ignore them. Now, honestly, at the end of the day, what I was worried about in scenario 1 was what other people would think in scenario 2. And so I had to let that go. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't. And I tell myself that all the time, and you got to tell yourself, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Who cares? You could have done the worst thing you possibly could, and you could have committed the biggest sin. At the end of the day, you can go to jail. That's fine. But it doesn't matter what people think, because more than likely they're not really thinking about you. They're not. They may be talk about you for 5 seconds. Do you guys remember the Idaho killings? Yeah, they were big for a while, and now they're or the Vallow case, all of that, it was big for a while, and now people still think about it once in a while, and people do think that the people who committed those murders are not mentally well. But you know what? It doesn't affect them, their day to day, and it doesn't affect the people that are in prison. It doesn't affect them really either. They're still just living their lives. We're still just doing the thing. So ignore the noise. Ignore the outside noise. Ignore people telling you what to do. If it's starting to get to the point where you're let's just say I want to build a business and I want to create an email list. And all of a sudden, you've got all this stuff all over coming. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. Take my course. Do this. Do that. At the end of the day, it's okay to take the course and take the golden nuggets from it. That do it your way. Do it your way. And hopefully the course would teach you different ways to do it. But most of them don't. Most of them will teach you the one way to do it. And I know that out there, there's so many different ways for everybody that you've got to teach the different ways to do it. So ignore the noise. And the next one is give it some time. Give it time and give yourself some grace. Do not expect yourself to be perfect. I tell people this all the time. Give yourself some grace. Oh my heck. If you think we are all perfect, and that goes to number, the next one is don't compare. Give yourself some grace here and give it time. Time, the more time that's under your belt, the less effect it will have on you, or the less pain it will feel, just give it some time. And that's what happened. It took me 4 or 5 days to finally process what happened and get it through and surrender it. But it took some time, and that's okay too. If you need that time, take it. But just try not to take up too much, because really, at the end of the day, I look back and it was a waste of time. Total waste of time, because what I did during that time when I was dwelling on it and thinking about it is I created scenarios in my mind that never even happened. I created, I'm going to do this and this and this if this happens, or this and this and this if they say this, or if they want to do this, or and it didn't even happen. It didn't. I created stuff that I just worried about it more than I should have. So give yourself some time, but at the same time, remind yourself that the more time you give it is kind of it's wasted time. And then we go to don't compare, which is give yourself some grace. Nobody's perfect, and everybody's heard the whole scenario of comparing is the thief of joy. And this was really hard for me when I first started doing a mediumship. I got called out. I got a reading by a medium who said, "You're jealous of other mediums." I'm like, I'm not jealous. I just wish I was as good as them. And I guess that's what jealousy is. That's exactly what jealousy is. So I guess I was jealous, but I didn't feel like I was jealous in a negative way. But she totally called me out, totally made me rethink. And then now when I see mediums, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the coolest thing that she came up with. I want to be that good. I am going to work to be that good. I'm going to put my hours of mediumship to be that good. So don't compare yourself to others. And another thing too is stay calm. A lot of times when things don't go our way, or we feel like we have to have control and we lose control, we get anxious. We get super anxious because we're losing control. And I'm telling you what, control, you know what anger is? Anger is when you don't have control. Anger is when you don't have control of somebody else. When you couldn't control somebody else, you're angry at them. You couldn't control that somebody else didn't want to be with you. You couldn't control that somebody else was mean to your son. You couldn't control something, and so now you're angry. Anger is you not being able to control what somebody else's actions. So every time you're angry, I want you to stop and think, who am I mad that I can't control? That's what it is. You can't control somebody. A lot of times it's 4-year-old kids. Then that's okay. Sometimes it's your kids. Sometimes it's your spouse. Sometimes it's a client. Sometimes it's a coworker. Sometimes it's somebody did something. And all at the end of the day, at the bottom line is you couldn't control it. You couldn't control what they said. You couldn't control what they did. You couldn't control their actions. And so you got mad. So that's all anger is. So let it, try and stay calm. Try and not get that emotion. I tell my clients all the time, on earth, the frequency, our emotions are at a dial 10. We turn that volume up so loud on our emotions, and we try and control them. On the other side, the volume's a little bit down. They still have emotions, but not clear at a 10. And that's part of why we're here, is to learn how to control that volume button of our emotions. So try and stay calm. Picture that emotional volume, and try and turn it down. Visualize you turning it down. Try not to be so attached to the outcome. And just try different scenarios. I used to do this all the time. I used to be, what's the worst thing that could happen? In this scenario, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I would say, okay, this is what could happen. And you know what? I would see if I could deal with it or not. How could I deal with it? We go on trips all the time, me and my husband on road trips, and he rarely talks to me on the road. And I used to get offended. I'm like, why doesn't he? Finally, I realized that while he's driving down the road, he comes up with different scenarios that might happen. If the flat tire happens, if something runs in front of him, anything that can happen, instead of just like enjoying the journey, he just does this thing where he's like, if this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this. If we get a flat tire here, if we pass this, his mind is constantly thinking. And you know what? That's how his mind works, and that's okay. But at the same time, he's not enjoying the journey. So we work on that constantly too. We work on how he can stay in the now and try and enjoy the journey instead of worry about what could happen on this road trip. It's just how he thinks. And same with anywhere we travel. If it's not our first time going, if it's our first time going, he does this the whole time because he's not surrounded by an environment that he knows. And so he wants to be prepared for anything that happens instead of just being in the moment. And some people are wired like that, and that's okay. I do the same thing, just in different scenarios, not in traveling. So I used to do it in readings. I'd be like, what if it doesn't go this way? What if it doesn't go this way? But once I'm in the power, it's completely gone. I don't even know why. Like, I would sit and worry about it, but then once I would sit in the reading and be ready and Spirit took over, it would be gone. But then as soon as the reading was done, I'd stress about the next one. I don't anymore, but that's how it used to be. So the next one, number 6, after stay calm, is own your freaking life. Choose to be happy. You know, that emotional dial, you get to choose where the volume's at on that. You get to choose where that is. No outside source put you where you are today. You did that by your choices. I mean, granted, there are things that happened to you and there are things that weren't great, and you get to process that, and that's fine. But you also get to choose. I'm not shaming anybody for being in victim mode. I'm not. You know what? Honestly, I'm just telling you how I feel, and if you don't like it, you don't have to listen. It's just. I just know you get to decide. You get to decide your next step. You get to, unless you're letting other people control you. You get to decide. So own your life. Choose your happy, or make that choice. If you want to be sad, be sad. If you want to be a victim, be a victim. But just at the end of the day, no, you're choosing that. You choose that. And again, this is the very last one. Don't be attached to the outcome. Sometimes things don't happen the way we plan. Sometimes things don't happen exactly like we wanted them to, and we have to bend, or we have to adapt to the way it did turn out. And that's when we have to adapt and redirect ourselves and maybe find a different course of direction. And yes, we get to wallow in it for a minute, and we get to be sad because that's what we choose. And then we have to change the sails, and we have to move in a different direction. And that doesn't mean you can do it happy, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It means it's hard, and it means it's going to be hard, and you can't control it. And there's going to be storms, and there's going to be waves, and there's going to be all the things that come, and you get to just do your best. And at the end of the day, that's all it is. And sometimes when you're selling that boat, sometimes you do all the things you can. You do all the things you can. You do all the things you're supposed to. And then there's a time where maybe the storm gets so bad you just have to surrender. And that's where we get sometimes in life. Sometimes on our way to goals, sometimes on our way to achievement, sometimes on our way just on the journey alone. We set ourselves, and of course we have a destination, right? But sometimes we get pulled off track. And as long as we do our best to pull back on track, then that's all we can do. And there's going to be a time when we just have to surrender, and we just have to let it go and let it be, and just let it be easy. Don't try so hard that you're killing yourself, that it's not fun anymore. Just let it be easy. And that's not always doable. There's always, this is a great scenario and a great but what I don't want you to is to get so far off course and so hard that you lose the fun in the journey. Because there's just sometimes when you start to lose the fun in the journey, that's the time when you need to just let it go, and you need to surrender it to Spirit and let them take care of it. So, you guys, I hope that helps. And honestly, it's hard. And I know, and sometimes but I'm here to talk about hard things. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And if you don't agree, you don't have to listen. You you don't. I'm sure there's people out there that are like, well, you don't know what I've been through. I know. And you don't know what I've been through either. So we don't know. And there's some hard ass things out there. Hard ass things. And we can't always control it. And so as long as you do your best and you can stand in front of your maker and your creator and say, I just did the best I could. That's all they care about. That's all that matters, is that you just did the best you could. I just want you to picture your child going through the most difficult scenario that they can. And you so badly want to help them. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you get that chance to go help them and sometimes you can't because you know they've got to learn that lesson on their own. That's that. And then at the end of the day, they come to you and say, Mom, I just did the best I could. Then nothing else matters, right? Nothing else matters because I still love my child more than anything. So, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I got emotional about this because anytime you talk about my kids, I do this. My kids, man, they own me. That's where I am owned, is my kids. I will do anything above and beyond for them. So that's where I lose some of my is with the kids. So just so you know, you guys, we're all in this together. We all are connected and we all help each other. We all have our own parts of the recipe that we give. And the only way to figure this stuff out is to be connected to who we are, be connected to others, mostly ourselves, and be connected to spirit. So at those points in our lives when we need to let go and say, I got to give it up, it's time to let go, then you can listen to that. And so this is like perfect segue into, my connection course, honestly, because there's more than one way to connect, and you're different. And you're going to connect different than everybody else. And in this course, I am going to help you figure out your way to connect, your strengths, your weaknesses, your way to connect at whatever level you're at. Because this life is hard. I don't want to say that because that's putting it out there. Life is fun and life is easy, but sometimes it's messy. And sometimes the magic is in the mess. And it's just is a better or a let it be easy journey when you know that connection and how connected you are to others, the source, and to yourself. So I love you guys so much, and I just wish you the best. And I know that we talk about hard things, and that's okay because you got this. You freaking got this. So just remember, you have everything you need inside of you, and you are the magic. And I'll see you next time. If you liked this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you can share it with everybody and never miss an episode.